What's good, everyone? It's your boy Salos back again with another Monster Hunter video, and let me tell you something, okay? The video you guys saw, I'm not sure this video is coming out the day immediately after, but the Stygian and Zinogre video you guys saw this week, I actually forgot that I wanted to make a roundtable about it, so here we are, almost 3 months later. You guys can probably tell because he was still Rathlos gear, and I still carded to this monster. I'm good at this game, I promise. But that's not why we're here. I'm actually here because at this point in the game, I'm at Elatrion. So I want to say I'm about 85% done with the game at this point. So I think I have a pretty informed decision and a well more versed opinion on how I did in the moment. Because like I said, at that point, I had just fought Stygian Zinogre for the very first time. At this point, I have fought Stygian Zinogre quite a few times. And I think that I have a bigger perspective on Iceborne as a whole than just Stygian Zinogre. So this is just gonna be, it still is a Stygian Zinogre video, my thoughts and impressions on him as a monster, but it is gonna be a little bit more general now that I've gotten more into the depths of the Raging Brachydias, Furious Rajang, Safi Jiva, and all the things in between. So if you guys are here for a nice little discussion video, you guys are excited to hear me ramble for a little bit, because you guys do say you like my little discussions, make sure you hit that like button, because you already know your support is greatly appreciated, and it is the most direct way to tell me that you enjoy these type of videos. So if these videos keep getting good reception, you guys keep hitting the like button, I'll keep making them, and I will continue to make them, even for the monsters that I've already fought, like Raging Brachydias, Furious Rajang. As of right now, I've not made a discussion video on those, but if you guys like this one, then we'll keep going. All I'm getting at is that if you guys like what you're hearing right now, you guys like to hear me ramble, then go ahead. But this is a discussion video. There will be gameplay in the background. I believe there's also going to be I didn't realize there was an event quest for Horizon Zero Dawn: The Survivor. Yeah, I didn't know that one of the quests I did was actually an event quest. I was listening to the music, I was like, wait, this doesn't sound like Monster Hunter music. So yeah, you guys get a little bonus of me doing an event quest in here too. So without further ado, following more stalling, let's finally get into the Stygian Zinogre discussion. So I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but Monster Hunter, well, Capcom I should say, is hosting a voting event right now where it's asking the community to go on their site and to vote for who you think who is your favorite monster. And that really got me thinking, because if you would ask me this at any point, I would just say Zinogre. No questions asked. My favorite monster is Zinogre. I think I've said it in a couple of these other discussion videos. I've said it all throughout the playthrough that Zinogre is my favorite monster. But then I went on to shout out to Rage Gaming that they were talking about the results from, I believe it was a couple of years back when Rise first came out, that they were just talking about that, how this is just their opinion, but it did really make me think that in their opinion that Zinogre is a cool concept of a monster, that he's a dog, everyone loves, well, wolf I should say, but dog, wolf, yeah, if you know, you know. But they were saying that he has the whole dog appeal, everyone loves dogs, and the whole ecology of the Folger bugs, and how he's their protector, how it's like a symbiosis relationship, that he gives them protection from the predators of the forest, and in return, they give their electricity powers to Zinogre, and how only the strongest of Zinogre get to adult forms, become protectors of forest. And it is just such a cool ecology around Zinogre. He is just a very cool monster on a conceptual level. But then I really started to think about it, and it's like, if I really think about it, because my first game was Monster Hunter Rise, and that was my first encounter with Zinogre. And in that game, Zinogre was just a very fast and aggressive monster. There weren't that many. I know that one of the biggest complaints about base Rise is that we as the hunters were just too powerful. It was like, who's really the monster in this situation? Because the monsters could not keep up with us. We had moves that output an insane amount of damage, that we could basically stun lock monsters and we could beat them in record times. Like, I believe that Nargacuga and Zinogre used to be final bosses of their games. In the base game of Rise, we could beat those monsters in under 2 minutes. That's just how powerful our hunters were. So it really just kind of, a lot of the monsters kind of killed over and died, but there were very few monsters that actually adapted to the Rise system. I would argue Zinogre is one of them, because in this game, Zinogre has been kind of slowed down in a sense, and I have fought Zinogre in multiple games at this point. I fought him in Iceborne now, and I fought him in 4 Ultimate. And let me tell you something, in those games, his fight is not very enjoyable, because he spends a lot of the time he's kind of zooming around the place, because he's always been a fast monster. In every incarnation, Zinogre's always one of the faster monsters you encounter. But I think that the key difference in Rise and other games is that in other games, he uses that speed kind of like Sonic in Smash Brothers. If you guys don't know about Sonic in Smash Bros., let me tell you something, okay? Sonic is probably one of the most hated characters in the game because he uses his speed defensively. By that, I mean he uses his speed to run away from you, and he is so fast that he can just do hit shots. He can zip in, hit you, get out. Zip in, hit you, get out. And you can't do anything about it because he's the fastest character in the game. So he can just kind of repeatedly rinse his cycle, and once he has enough percent on you or he has enough of a percent lead, he will literally run away for the entire match, and then you'll time out and he'll win by default. That is why Sonic is probably one of the most hated characters in the series. And Zinogre kind of feels like that in a way. That I know people say they hate Rathalos because he never lands, but Zinogre just kind of camps you out with Electric Blast the entire time. So it really is, I do think that they got a little better at it, but it kind of just feels like Zinogre just hits you so hard that when he hits you, you get staggered and you get put into either a knockdown or a tremor, and tremors in this game are actually horrendous. And then he'll just use that to kind of do like a backpedal, and then he'll roar, and lightning will just strike from all around him. So it feels like he's just hitting you with brute force, brute strength to put you in a topple animation. And then in this game specifically, in Iceborne, he just roars like there's like these electric orbs that kind of circle around him. And it just can be very annoying. Luckily I use dual blades, so dual blades can kind of keep up with him. But even so, it's not until Rise where he starts to use that speed offensively, where he uses that speed. He uses the Folger bugs as more like a Kaioken boost, and he just goes, when he goes to his Super Saiyan form, he just hits so hard. He moves so much faster. Like, when you wirefall, he chases your wirefall. It is intense because usually wirefalling out in a way is you move so far away from the monsters can't help to keep up with you. Not Zinogre. He will chase you to the ends of the earth because, oh my goodness, he is such a fun fight. Oh my goodness, in Rise he is. And that's what I'm getting at, is that I feel like in older games that Zinogre uses speed defensively, and it wasn't until Rise he starts to use speed offensively. And I think that's the key difference with Zinogre as a base species. We're not here to talk about as a base species. That's just base Zinogre. I haven't even gotten into Stygian Zinogre, the reason why we're actually here. And I think that Zinogre is actually a chapter in Iceborne where the difficulty really starts to ramp up. I guess you could technically say Rajang was that first monster, but I don't know. My friends didn't really struggle with Rajang. My friends didn't really struggle. Well, they didn't really struggle too much with Stygian and Zinogre. But I've also been doing a lot of SOS grinding and a lot of SOS missions. And let me tell you, there are a lot of SOS flares for Stygian and Zinogre. I'm not sure if it's just because Stygian and Zinogre is that quest when everything unlocks. Because after you fight Stygian and Zinogre, that's when really you can do whatever you want in Iceborne. Up until then, it's not until you beat Stygian and Zinogre where you can't fight Safi'jiiva, you can't fight Elatrion, you can't fight Fatalis. All that opens up after you beat Stygian and Zinogre. So, because you don't actually have to beat Elatrion. Well, I mean, I guess you do. Yeah, I guess you kind of have to. But technically speaking, you don't have to do the Elatrion quest. You don't have to do Raging Brachiodeus or Furious Rajang to fight Fatalis. You can skip all that if you really want to. It's not advised. I wouldn't recommend it because their gear is actually pretty good. But technically speaking, if you choose to play the game that way, you can. The only monster you have to defeat is Stygian Zinogre. And after you defeat him, then it's kind of just a free-for-all. And speaking of free-for-alls, Look what's happened on screen right here. Like, jeez. This hunt right here, this Savage Devil Joe. I'm getting sidetracked. But yeah, I think that's what I was feeling when I said I had mixed feelings. Because this Zinogre does feel a little more aggressive, but there's nothing I can really point to about this subspecies specifically that really amplifies cool things about Zinogre that I liked. Like, he's not faster. I mean, I guess he has a Psycho Crusher. That's kind of cool. But he inflicts Dragon Blight now, which actually just decreases your elemental value, which also in turn increases your damage output. So he's a little tougher in that sense. But I feel like just in general, he's just more reliant on the dragon element, because when he does paw swipes, then he creates like after effects, or like just pulsing energy from his paws. They just give more reach, is what I'm saying. That he inflicts now wind pressure. He wind pressures you, so now that you can be stuck in place. So he has wind pressure, he has tremors, he's camping you out, he's still fast, and he has a Psycho Crusher, which has carded me in every single attempt that I've done, because I either get tremored, I either get knocked out because he hits so hard he puts you in hard knockdowns that you can't recover from, or he just straight up one-shots. Like, I don't want to say that this isn't the Zinogre I know. This isn't my boy that I fell in love with. I think that I've just been spoiled by Rise, because I feel like Zinogre just in Rise. I even replayed this. I was considering using a Zinogre clip from Rise, but I was like, no, we're talking about Stygian Zinogre, so I can't really do that because Stygian Zinogre's not in Rise. But I literally went back to fight for Zinogre in Rise, and yeah, I still love that fight. But then when I just fought him today in World Stygian Zinogre, and I fought regular Zinogre just for the heck of it, it's not the same. That's not my boy. That is not my boy. What have you done with my child? But I just feel like there's just so many fights that Rise has just made significantly better. Kushala Delora, even Risen Kushala Delora, I didn't really have a problem with him, like, at all. He was, I don't want to say he was a fun fight, but he wasn't a terrible fight either. He was just a fight that was just like, yes, this is a monster that exists in this game, and I don't have any strong feelings positively or negatively about this fight. But going back to World, I have not even touched Arch-Tempered Kushala, because that just sounds miserable. That's neither here nor there. They made Rathos a fun encounter. They made Kushala I wouldn't say a fun encounter, but they made him not a miserable encounter. That he just feels like another monster. That's a significant upgrade on what he was ever in any game. So I don't know. Zinogre, when I really start to sit down and dissect Zinogre, it's like, it's just the Sunbreak fight. When I really sit down and think about it, yeah, it's just Sunbreak that I think that his fight is amazing. Because when you put into tremors, wind pressure, speed, defensive speed, mind you, and projectiles, that just doesn't sound like a fun fight. Because I don't know. Yeah, that's just something that I've just kind of had to sit with and just really sit down and swallow. But going back to the whole thing on Zinogre or Stygian Zinogre, that he really is just the beginning of what I was getting at in the Stygian Zinogre videos, that I think that he was the first monster to really introduce the concept of power creep. And I'm not sure how accurate that is, but I know that I keep using Smash references. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm a Smash player. I'm an ex-competitive Smash player, so forgive me if I'm using a lot of Smash metaphors here, but I'm pretty sure that everyone has played Smash at some point to some capacity. Or you've at least seen or heard about it, because Smash is just one of those games that's just so massive that you cannot not have heard about it. So, back in Smash 4, we had a similar issue to Monster Hunter World, where whenever the DLCs came out, that they always tried to one-up each other. And by the time you got to the end of the cycle, that the last DLC fighters that were introduced were the best characters in the game that dominated the meta. And the last two characters that were added were Cloud and Bayonetta. And those two characters put the meta on a chokehold. You saw Clouds everywhere, There were cloud memes that everyone had a pocket cloud. That if your main didn't do it, you just whipped out the pocket cloud because cloud was super easy to learn, he was super easy to pick up, and he was actually kind of fun to play. So there was like everyone had a pocket cloud. So top eights were either clouds and bayonetas. Clouds and bayonetas everywhere. Everyone who they lost their main, just whip out the pocket cloud. So it kind of feels like Iceborne has that similar issue, and a lot of my friends have had this problem too, that luckily I just enjoy set building. Like, that's just me in any video game, that I enjoy originality. I like just seeing, I like just having a toolbox of things that I can tinker around with and mess with and just see what I can create out of them. And that's kind of what Monster Hunter allows you to do, is that they give you all of these skills, all of these weapon effects, all of these different weapons to deal with, that they all do different things. They all give you all these different skills and armor bonuses, and they're just like, hey, play the game how you feel like. Or they give you all these different play styles. You can play offensive, you can be defensive, you can be supportive, but it's up to you to figure out how to do with it. And I get that to a lot of people that can be overwhelming, because yeah, I totally get it that there's so many tools in the game that how do you manage through all of them? But that's just something that I've always enjoyed. I just love kind of putting things together and just figuring out how they work and just making my best decision. So I never really look up quote unquote meta builds. I mean, I do if I want to be steered in the right direction, if I'm like going the right way, but I never like just look at, hey, what's the best build in Iceborne? Cool, let me go build that. I always just say, okay, I'll take that into consideration, but what can I do on my own? So the fact that there's practically no information on this game, because everything that just says Safi'jiiva Fatalis and sometimes Elatrion stuff, but overall it's just all in-game sets are Fatalis, because at the end of the game, at the end of the day, he power crept the entire game. There was no reason to use any other armor set, because he gave I believe that's how Inheritance works. I haven't actually fought Fatalis yet, so I actually don't know for a fact. So if I sound stupid here, then whatever. I'm trying to play this as blind as possible, so I'm not looking up too much about Fatalis. But I believe that his skill Inheritance gives you every secret skill in the game. So that's Adshare Secret, Divine Blessing Secret, Stamina Cap, all that crap, that he just gives you all of those skills. So there literally is no reason to use any other skill except for Fatalis. And that his entire set is kind of like the Amatu set in Rise, where he has 4 slots out the wazoo. I think he has I heard he has something like 17 level 4 decoration slots or something. That is a blank canvas to do whatever you want. So yeah, even in a situation like me, someone who likes to make their own sets, why would I not use Fatalis gear? Because it is the perfect way for me to make my builds as customizable as possible. That have every secret skill in the game, so there's no reason to use any other armor for armor bonuses. And I had this amazing build, this blank canvas that allows me to use any decoration to max out any skill that I want, whether it be defensive, offensive, or supportive. Yeah, it really is just the best armor in the game, and there's no question about it. There is no reason to use anything else. That's kind of how Smash 4 was. So I get it, but at the same time, I think that Stygian Zinogre, in my opinion, was the monster that really started to lean towards that direction. Because even like when you look at his weapons, even like he has like some of the best dragon weapons in the game. So I don't know, even in the sense of just, what am I trying to say here? Even in the sense that just the dragon element, then what came directly after Zinogre? Safi'jiiva. And we all know how that went. Safi'jiiva weapons basically made every weapon irrelevant, because Safi'jiiva weapons can have any element in the game, and they can also have the item effects of having monster bonuses or set bonuses into them as well. So even though Zinogre might have the best dragon weapons in the game, the next monster immediately made those weapons relevant, because you can boost your sharpness. You can choose to focus on element. So I guess that when it comes to consistency, that you can have a nice consistent build, But anything else, yeah, you can literally just make your desired weapon better in Zinogre. If you want to focus more on raw and you don't really care about element, then yeah, just put that raw damage as high as possible. If you want more sharpness, just focus on sharpness. Make that sharpness as purple as possible. When you have handicraft in there, then that sharpness goes even further. If you want to focus on element, then sure, your sharpness might take a hit, but you can crack up that element damage so far that it outdoes the Stygian Zinogre stuff anyway. Like I said, Stygian Zinogre might have a good base, but depending on your own specific needs, Safi Jiva just might give you better returns overall. I don't know, man. All this time I've really thought Zinogre was my favorite monster, but now that I'm really sitting down and just really thinking about it and going back and re-editing that video with my Stygian Zinogre encounter, it was really like, what about Zinogre do you like specifically? And when I really asked myself that question, I couldn't really answer it. So it really made me go back. I think that I am gonna do like a top 5 favorite monsters. I was going to hold off. I was going to do this anyway. I'm putting all cards on the table at this point. I was going to make a tier list of all monsters of Rise and Sunbreak once I was done with Fatalis. I might still do that, because once I'm done with Fatalis, I'm planning quite a few things. I'm not going to tell everything. I'm putting a few cards on the table. I was going to do a tier list of all the monsters in Rise and Sunbreak and all the monsters in World and Iceborne, and just kind of see where all my favorite monsters stack up. But with this new Capcom poll coming out, I might just do a top 5 favorite monsters at the time being. And spoilers, Zinogre still is going to be in that list, because I still do, despite everything that I just said about Stygian Zinogre and regular Zinogre, it does take away from just the concept of Zinogre. And it doesn't take away from my first impression with Zinogre. That his fight in Rise and Sunbreak, I went back and fought those monsters. I fought him at anomaly rank 200 or something like that. I've even fought the Hazard Zinogre before I recorded this, and yeah, he holds up. He still is a very cool monster in Rise of Sunbreak, and that didn't really change for me. But that's one game. That is one game out of every other time he's appeared in Monster Hunter, and I cannot justifiably say that the one game carries him that hard that he's my favorite monster. He's still in the top 5 because first impressions are a very powerful thing. I think we all know that. But yeah, it's just a weird situation. And a little sad realization at that point. But hey, that's what opinions are. If we're not human, we don't change, and opinions can change over time. That's what makes us human. I guess all that's really left for me to talk about in terms of Stygian Zinogre is his armor gear. And let me just tell you that I do find a lot of value. At the time, I wasn't really too invested into Latent Power Secret, but I don't know, when you're kind of just mediocre at the game and you get hit quite a bit, Latent Power Secret is really a terrible thing. One of my other hunters in our group, DP, Dark Pit the Smasher, he has pretty much rocked out with the Stygian Zinogre gear, because he was like, yeah, I get hit a lot, and the more I get hit, the more I get damage, and I love damage. DP is one letter off of DPS, so he's been rocking out with Stygian Zinogre gear. And even outside of that, I think that they just have good, very individual parts. That you have the gloves gives you Park Breaker level 2. That is very good for the immediate fight afterwards with Safi Jiva, where the whole focus is to break as many parts as possible and to break every bone in his body. You have the helmet that gives Power Prolonger, 2 levels of it, mind you. And for weapons like Insect Glaive and Charge Blade, where Power Prolonger is pretty important switch checks. All these weapons that require you to build up some type of meter or some type of gauge over time for a very limited power boost or an alternate state of your weapon. Yeah, that's actually pretty important, because we all need that. For Charge Blade specifically, we need to keep our shield charged as much as possible, because having a charged shield gives you 2 levels of guard. So 1 level of additional guard in your build gives you guard level 3, which basically lets you guard most weapons, most attacks in the game without getting the the hard knockback animation where you can't act out of it. So having your shield charge is actually pretty important. Having your sword charge, which I don't really do a good job of doing, but yes, having your sword charge is pretty important, because if you're an impact charge blade user, then your charged sword does impact damage to KO the monster faster. Using elemental charge blade, then your charged sword does elemental damage, which means that you do more elemental damage, which when fights on Elatrion is pretty important that you're doing as much elemental damage as possible. So yes, having power prolonger is pretty important for a lot of those weapons. In the legs, you have 2 levels of focus, which again, weapons like charge blade, pretty important, because with that, you're able to charge your files faster, meaning you're able to get your sword charge faster, meaning that you're able to combo in to your power prolonger and have more uptime on your charged sword state or your charged shield state. Pretty important. Also, weapons like Greatsword. Don't really know too much about Greatsword, but I think that we all know True Charge Slash in the name. If you're able to charge your True Charge Slash faster, big Unga Boonga damage, I think we all would appreciate if our Greatsword friends were able to get off their Unga Boongas more often, because that leads to more KO, which for us, more uptime to wail on the monster. Again, Zinogre just has very good gear overall. And even though I do feel like up until you get to Fatalis, I do feel like that there is something here for everyone. How many weapons have I just named that you can benefit off of? I named Greatsword, I named Insect Glaive, I named Switch Axe, I named Charge Blade. There's something here for a lot of people. I named Part Breaker, which for blunt weapons, I guess even hammers for Part Breaker, pretty good. There is there is something here for just about everyone. So I think that's Zinogre's gear overall, that even if you don't use the full set, they do give you a lot of tools to play with and a lot of things to kind of tinker around with. So people like me who like to kind of set build, I use a lot of Zinogre's gear in a lot of my builds because, again, they just have very good individual parts. And even some people that I've done raids with for Safi Jiva, I've literally seen a lot of Zinogre gear, both from his base form and his Stygian form. So a quick recap. If I were to rate Stygian Zinogre's fight in this game, I'd probably give it a 3. Highlights being that, like I said, that Zinogre is just a very fast and offensive monster. And when he does choose to go on the offensive, it can be a lot of fun, especially with Charge Blade, because he gives you a lot of time to guard your attacks. And if you do a perfect guard where you don't have too much knockback, you can go to instant Super Amped Element Discharger or instant Savage Axe styles. It can be a lot of fun, and Zinogre is actually pretty flinchable. With those heavy hits, when you do a Savage Axe style, Zinogre does flinch quite a bit, which also makes a lot of openings for you to do your big attacks and to shift the momentum back in your favor. So I really do love that aspect of him, that he is fast, he is aggressive, but if you hit him hard enough, he will stagger and he will flinch back, he will recoil, and that's your chance to really get some big numbers in. What I don't like is that he amplifies what I don't like about old Gen Zinogre, where he uses the speed more defensively. He uses it to reposition, he uses it to roar, he uses it to use just his brute strength and power to tremor the ground, which I don't feel is too much the fault of the fight specifically. I think that's more of a World and Iceborne thing specifically, where tremors were just kind of overtuned. So when you get tremored in this game, it's arguably worse than getting roared. So it's not really his fault, but it's the game that he's in. So by default, it also affects his fight. So for me, the fight is a 3. For the weapons, I gotta give it a 3 as well. Because, like I said, while these weapons aren't terrible, they're very middle of the road. That they'll get the job done, that they have good sharpness, they have okay elemental damage, they have okay raw, but at least for Dual Blaze and Charge Blade specifically. I'm sorry if I'm focusing too hard on Dual Blaze and Charge Blade and I'm ignoring all the other weapons, because I'm sorry, those 2 weapons I use for this game. But you have better options, like for Dual Blaze specifically. If you want to focus on element, mixture of I'm using a mix of Namiel and Volcana, because those are two weapons those are 2 armor sets that focus more on elemental damage. And if you're able to get free element in your build, then the Shari's Valda give you significantly more dragon damage and significantly higher Elder Seal bonus. The Elder Seal on those are actually pretty high. You have defense bonus on those as well, and you have very good raw. So again, it's kind of just eh. There's, like I said, they get the job done, and when you also take into consideration, Safijiva is literally right after this fight, and those weapons are just so much better than everything else that comes after it. It leaves Stygian Zinogre in a very awkward position where the things before it, if you're willing to put in the time and you're willing to put in the builds for it, then yes, they had better they give you better returns. And the things that come after it aren't even up for discussion. They're just objectively better in every single way. So Stygian Zinogre's weapons are just in this very middling, awkward territory where they're not quite better, that much better than the things before it, but they're definitely not better than the things after it. So they're very easy to make, at least that they don't branch off any weapons. So if you don't want to do too much grinding and you just want to make a weapon, or you want to just try something or try out a new weapon, I always recommend Stygian Zinogre gear because they have decent enough raw, they have decent enough sharpness, they have decent enough elemental damage. So if you want to try a new weapon in Master Rank, I always say start with just Stygian Zinogre because it doesn't branch off any trees. You can make them just off the rip. So yeah, very middle of the road weapons, and I think a 3 is perfect for them. When it comes to the armors, however, I gotta give the armor, I want to give it a 5 just because the individual pieces, I already talked about how good the individual pieces are, that the individual pieces are so good for so many different applications. It is so good for set building, it is so good for doing exactly what you need, and just aesthetically they're so, I just love the whole wolf pack theme. It kind of reminds me of, what's that tribe in Black Panther, I think the wolf pack tribe? The tribe that lives in the mountains that kind of clash heads with T'Challa. I forget what they are, but it reminds me of that clan. Like the whole. I love the Zinogre gear. Just aesthetically, the individual parts are good. I think that that latent power secret. I mean, that really does come down to playstyle because if you never get hit, or if you're a weapon like a ranged unit or a bow, and you don't really get hit all that much often anyway, then yeah, latent power secret is very underwhelming and is borderline useless because you're never going to get hit. Or if you're a longsword main that has just mastered the blade and you just counter everything, then yeah, there are some weapons in this game that latent power secret is actually useless. But if you're like me and you're just kind of middle of the pack and you get hit quite a bit, then yeah, latent power secret is going to give you that extra power boost to put you back in the game. And latent power secret just pushes that even further. So overall, decent, pretty good set bonus, but it does come down to play style. If it wasn't for the individual parts being so good and just so usable on every other thing, then I would give it a 3 as well. But because the individual pieces are just so good, they have good slottage, and they're very customizable, this will push it up to a 4 for me. But the only thing is that you can't, you have to, I mean, I guess that most armor sets in this game do require just 3 pieces. I mean, the really good ones like Volcana's Divinity and Frostcraft do require 4 slots. So that last slot is kind of important, but that does come down to just personal set building and all of that. But overall, very flexible pieces. You can very easily squeeze in 1 piece, maybe 2 if you're lucky, depending on the set you're running. But yeah, overall, I just love the pieces that they're sort of so customizable. But with all of that, I think that's all I have to say about Stygian Zinogre. It ended up being an encounter that wasn't as memorable as I was hoping it to be. Honestly, I kind of forgot all about this fight until I started editing the video. But when I was editing, I was like, oh, there actually was things I wanted to talk about. So I guess it was good to come back and revisit this after I hunted at least maybe like 10 or 12 Stygian Zinogres, and I had more time for the monster to really set in and vibe with me a little bit. So yeah, it was a nice little trip down memory lane, and I hope you guys know what comes afterwards. But with that, those are all my thoughts on Stygian Zinogre and just power creep in this game in general. But that's just my thoughts on things. Did I get anything right? Did I get anything wrong? Do you guys feel differently? Was I off the mark? Did I forget about anything? Because I'm more likely to forget something. Let me know in the comment sections below, because this is not the end. This is not an end-all be-all that my opinions are the only opinions. That this is just a springboard to get talking about Iceborne, because there are a lot of people coming back to the game. We're in the waiting period for Monster Hunter 6. And everyone's saying, oh, why is everyone coming back to Monster Hunter World? Because Monster Hunter World is so much better than Monster Hunter... No. We'll get to that eventually. But at the end of the day, people just go back to their favorite game while they're waiting for the next one. And being that Monster Hunter World is the game that put the game on the map, people are going back to the first game that they fell in love with the series with. They're just going back to World to pass the time. But that's neither here nor there. That's a whole nother discussion. So let me get out of here before I get on that tangent, because that's a special video in itself. But with all that being said, I'm about to get up out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Till then, deuces.